as long as I can't remember. While this tale may be a bit different from the rest in this book, a Christian anthology titled Of Dragons and Men, the others being allegory and poetry, this one is straight historical fiction. It is a short story that took nearly 15 years for me to write and put together. The characters within are indeed near to my heart, for my own heart is written out in one of them. This tale jostles about the things of cosmic skepticism, the eternal relevance of forgiveness, the fruit of bitterness, and other hefty thoughts. All such things are indeed reflective of my own heart and experiences in various areas, dealing with doubt and pain, forgiveness and unforgiveness. So while this might be read as mere fiction, it has made its way into this anthology for the mere fact that it is much deeper and darker than just a fictitious tale of two brothers going about in early America. It indeed contains similar elements to the painful sayings previously explored in this book. It brings to mind those concepts and works them out in characters and story. But I did say this was historical fiction. In part, it is inspired by a true event, and so we explore that event and the shady circumstances about it in this little story. But deeper than that, we explore the heart of man and the heart of God, and we continue the painful, yet Christ-focused dialogue of dragons and men. Mackenzie, our fictional lead, was an educated young man, heavily influenced by a fictional British professor named Rudolph King. In writing this, I have Mackenzie using some terms that do not translate well into our modern understanding of typical dialogue. Below is a list of terms and expressions common in the 19th and 20th century United States, England, and Scotland, which you'll probably wish you knew while reading. In order of appearance: barbigerous, bearded; aptycock, an intelligent young man; tooly, sickly; sliving, a thinly sliced piece of meat or a sparing portion of meat; flenched, when the weather looks as if it is going to get better, but never does, the day is flenched; razzled, warmed or cooked on the outside; handspurs, pains or stiffness felt in the legs after walking; knoppy, a new pen; crumpsy, grumpy; weathermouth, a patch of sky on the horizon that is sunny, it has a dense bank of clouds on either side; too high for my nut, beyond one's reach; fortnight, 2 weeks or a period of 14 days; some pumpkins, a big deal; wake snakes, get into mischief; spake, past tense of speak; shinning around, move quickly; limpsy, limp, used to refer to someone before they faint; oft, often; fockling, to fockle, make mistakes or fumble due to being tired; mundling, to mundle, to do something clumsily or do something for enjoyment regardless of the consequences; outspeckle, a laughing stock; vargle, to work messily or perform an unpleasant task; greenbacks, legal tender notes, the type of paper money used in the U.S. from 1862 to 1971; pegpuff, a younger woman with the manners of an elderly woman. In respectful memory, this story is dedicated to William Lees, Joseph Bach, James Cooper, Emma Conhoven, Albert Welster, Jacob M. Ansbach, Ernest P. Schiebel, Theodore Morris, John Cochran, Solomon Newgas, Cornelius McCarthy. Day 1, April 30, 1905. For as long as I can remember, I have been walking about the country with my barbigerous brother Harry. My name is Mackenzie Adio, said Harry, which I remember vaguely. Harry said, write all that I experience and all that I remember in this book, a journal. He said this as I have something, forgetting. Harry names it. I perpetually cannot remember all that happened to me prior to 3 Sundays ago. Harry tells me little of what happened or why we cannot abide in any of the cities we visit, but nonetheless, I keep with him. He is the total of my family and friends, although I presume, nay, I hope, I had more in my old life. We both cling to a hope that the more I write, the more I will remember. That with every page I read in this journal, I will remember those experiences, like sparks manifesting a flame, and with every memory I retain, I might abandon my Thule mind. Our hope is that at least. Harry says we have traversed the railway for 2 months now. A mere 3 weeks it has been to me. Harry has a humorous way of speaking. I speak properly, and he does not, Harry said. Educated is what he says I am, and simply the working type is what he names himself. Apparently, I used to name myself an aptycock, which Harry says was boastful. A normal dawdling day was today. We woke to our near-dead fire when it was still darkish. We ate the sliving of rabbit Harry had caught last eventide and started. We have very few possessions: matchbox, axe, and our clothing. Harry has a pistol he always carries with him, and I am never allowed to wield it. He says I cannot hold a gun, and that before, when I could remember, I was never the gun type. You never hit anything you shot at. He spoke at me in his working type way. His eyes glanced from me then. I thought him disingenuous then, for he began mumbling things in retort. It is recalled, him doing and telling me such, for it was yesterday. A swarm of gulls were hovering where we had settled for rest. I wished to bring one down, so I requested to take a shot at the birds. Harry did not allow it. A book is held by Harry also, when the sun rises. It is small, and he keeps it tight to him when we walk. He says he lets me read it, but the memory of such is not with me, although not much of anything is. All he does is to protect me, said Harry the week last. Sometimes I wonder if he is incorrect or deceiving. I ought to trust him. I do, but he has not told me why we are living the way we are. He has not told me why we cannot settle forever. And the bother is this: perhaps he hath told me before my try-weak memory. Though I know myself little, I can say I hate being daft. Day 2, May 1, 1905. The question was asked of him today: why must we go forth and not back, sojourn and never settle? The right is mine to know, but this journey is not his alone. A right? You ain't got no right to know, he said in his drawn-out and proper voice. I am not well at conflict, I suppose, for nothing was said by me after. When you remember, then you will know. It surprised, being said properly by Harry. It is not false. The past cannot be remembered. Yet some things can. Words. A flurry of words is remembered. I use words I am not even sure Harry knows what they mean. Harry is my brother. I remember this. The normal, daily necessities of life, details and situations are remembered, as long as it is an object within the dealings of my previous 3 weeks. It is my wish I had written in this journal when I had first awoken, to be able to turn to that page and read of what happened, where I was, who was around me, if I was hurt. It pains me as if I will never know. For I ask Harry, and he angers, and to repeat would be the same result, ending void of answers, and the effort for naught. It is a flenched late day right now, and we are still by the track. Harry went into the trees to find food for us, and left me here to build a fire, which I have not done yet, although myself would enjoy being razzled. That is our normal schedule. We walk along the track until it gets darkish, or we get a handspurs. I'm often the latter. Then he goes and finds a supper, and I make the fire. It is the same practice every single day. It is dauntingly without daunt. Day 8, May 9, 1905. Religion and Politics. Whilst I remember nothing of anything of such, I seem to have been a fanatic of sorts in my day, in those days of light. Now I sit in darkness, unknowing and unremembering. I feel a fool. I am a fool, perhaps. But Harry insists I wouldn't always. I know it wrong to scoff in writing, but I feel it a-coming even now. Oh, to know what this is about. I sit by a fire again, as always. The older and bigger man is out of here, off manning, while I stay hither, seeming a husk of a man, griping about my ignorance too. I suppose Mackenzie a Dio in some days. Ha! What a foolish thing this all ought to be. Religion and politics. Harry says I know much of these things, and talk more of them. But a curious thing was said by him before him leaving this night. I was wrong, he told me. Not he, me. I was wrong. What could that bother to have been? I aim now that I was well known and understood much. I think that book Harry has is evil. I remember what I write after having read it, but nothing of what that book says. I imagine my mind, even being dumb and unremembering, holds still to the superiority of intellect Harry says had me once. Thus, I try to conclude, yes, even now in my stupidity, that the book is beneath me, or beyond me, I suppose. Perhaps it contains things beyond what a mind like mine can fathom, or things dark enough to allow a right mind to unremember them. Alas, I have no right mind, do I? Day 22, May 21, 1905. I have no memory of the first page being written, and this is the first day of my forgetting. I knew there were things that merely could not be remembered. My first lady friend, the first time a noppy was held by me, when my first employment was had, if ever I was. However, the first day is today, when the page I wrote is seen, and I know I wrote, yet it is not remembered. It is hated. I hate this, what Harry and I do and how we live. I must know why, if there is any reason or purpose for it. It seems like something is being ran from, that we run from it. Yet what? Is it a thing done by Harry? Is it a thing done by myself? I must know. Dawn approaches, and Harry is not yet awake. It will be asked of him when he awakens, and this time, arguing will occur until I have the knowledge. I must know. That did not go as hoped, or nearly well enough. I asked it of him, and he bowed his head and stared at his feet for a time. Finally, he looked up at me and said with his slanged wordage, "Mac, you need to stop asking me this." "The moment you answer it, I will cease the asking," I responded firmly. He let out a quick breath of air, not a sigh nor a laugh, but more of a scoff. "Let it go, Mac. You don't want to know." "Yes, I do," I was shouting. For what other purpose would I be asking? "Shut it, Mac. Do not ask me again," he said, yelling back, the last bit slow and well pronounced. Standing then, I pressured him, again and again, until he joined me in a stand and finally gave in. I had nowhere near the readiness needed for what he said. "Because I killed you, Mac," he shouted, losing his breath and sitting down on a log. His feet had his eyes after that. Awe sat me down also. I had neither the thought nor the energy to ask what that could have meant. After a long, quiet pause, Harry stood and went into the trees. I stayed behind. "Because I killed you, Mac." Will I ever know what that phrase could truthfully mean? Day 25, May 24, 1905. My crumpsy kin and I have yet to speak. The silent days number 3 now. Hard have I tried to recall him killing me. However, I cannot. Confusion and anger is seemingly all I know of the subject. He keeps his days with the norm. Yet hearing him, I oft catch cursing in whispers while he reads that little dark book of his. Spells are what come to my mind. Maybe the lad is a strange one, something of fairy tales. Yes, I know of those. The tall man killed by the shepherd boy, the strong man with long hair cut by lust, the old man thrown into a pit of beasts. Harry tells me of them, doing so the days before my apparent death was told to me. For now, speaking does not find us two. Yea, I am no dead man, that I know. To ponder of it, if I am dead, and religion be not a falsehood, for I understand religion to be the thinkings of lesser men who need safety of what is now and to come. Ha! I should think I'm a needer for a religion based on thus. Only, if religion be not a falsehood, which I should always like to think it, then I am dead, and this is hell. Hell. That is a word Harry says amidst his casting. Sitting and rocking with his eyes shut and that book open, he oft whispers hell and heaven and Christ and other ridiculous things. Perhaps that brother of mine is a soothsayer. This railway has now been followed a great distance by us. The occasional happenstance brings the sound of a train distantly. As Harry and I are so practiced in our routine, we do not have the need to say anything to one another or look at one another. To the nearest tree line we run and hide. If no trees are around, we hide behind rocks, bushes, or hills, anything to avoid being seen. I have contemplated a number of times running toward the train and attempting to board, to get away from Harry and the chosen life he has for us. But I always think to myself that perhaps this is being done by him for my good, and that I might be in danger if I went alone. Perhaps it is his spells that keep me back. Perhaps it is those spells that keep me safe. Day 52, June 20, 1905. Faded is the confusion and angry soul I once had for Harry. There remains no memory of that conversation with him, yet if I flip back 32 pages in this journal, I can read of its tension, and I have. All night since that page I have read it. Still nothing. Not a glimpse of a memory of what he was speaking of. Would it be Thursday? I asked Harry. Yes, he replied simply. This was not the first word spoken to one another since our altercation. On occasion he had told me to do something, or I asked him a simple question. I remember a day when we had said good morning at the early dawn, when a weather-mouth was bathing us with slivers of light. He is no sorcerer, as it happens. His mutterings are prayers, although I see no difference between spells and prayers. He has writhed at my suggestion, and pride not in his voice, but distaste, which makes me think of how bland our dinings are. Nay, that is not the point I am to make now. What I wish to write to remember is that Harry talks much of the subject of his religion. He still has me to read his spell book. I write such to see if you read this when I sleep, dear brother. And yes, the writings are still stupidity to me. Some things are strange enough to think of, the fairy tales. No, the man is sincere in his love for that little book. Such a strange thing that is. Perhaps he finds a hope in it similar to the hope I hope to have in this journal. My ponderings are tiring. Today was a quaint day to learn of things. Harry, I asked him, if something was asked of you by me, would you answer? Depends on what is asked, Mac, he replied shortly. Nothing more of what is behind us or what happened, I promise. Inquiring about what occurred had little reason now, I realized. This brother knew, but telling me gave him no comfort. And all times he did tell me something, it was tense, and our dealings soured like old game. So asking Harry the poignant questions, of which I so desperately wish to learn, is too high for my nut. I pondered perhaps if I asked about what lay forward, he would not resist. However, I wish to learn of where we are going, I did say. Our walk along the track was continued to be led by Harry, as he asked in his way, "Do you know which state we're in?" I thought not hard on this question. The answer was known. He told me a few days prior, and gracefully I remember it being told to me as if it were moments ago. Everything I have seen or heard in the previous fortnight and some days are so plain in my mind. It is as if my memory acts as a blank wall, and these conversations are sights and paintings upon it, visual but not interpretive. Yet nothing I truly wish to know is contained within this gallery of recent events. Yes, I said, we are in Montana, a state established 15 years ago. Harry responded smiling. I see you still got that amazing head of yours. He stopped walking and looked at me by turning. You want to know about the past still, yes? I was startled by the question. I knew not of what to respond with. I know all these words, and yet, presented with that question my heart so wished to ask, a response could not be summoned. You was always the smart one, Harry started. A real getter. Pa passed when we was young, so I got a job to help Ma out. You stayed in school while I worked. The years passed, and we knew you was going to be president. You knew everything. I do like writing this way. It helps me remember the voice of Harry, as if hearing him when I read. He paused a while. It felt remarkable to hear even a morsel of who I was. Frustration and happiness spurred within me. Then the accident happened, and you lost your memory. I'm sorry about that, Mac. I wish that it happened to me and not you, Harry said, turning away. It looked like a tear had found a place on his shabby cheek. The accident, I said. My remembering tried wickedly hard to bring forth a thing of it. And then I had it. The first memory of the past. The first memory from before 3 weeks. However, it was not from before the accident. It was what Harry had said to me. Because I killed you, Mac. I suppose the page, having been read every day, made that memory possible. It is not mere wordage on paper. It is the actual picture of that moment. His former anger was also remembered. The action that needed to be taken was to continue on with my previous method, speaking of what is ahead. Large was the agony within me for a subject change. When the past was heard of, who I was, who he was, it brought forth remembering. How much more could the past being discussed offer? Yet, if Harry rages again, I know forever the possibilities will be sealed. Patience is required. Montana, I began. It is quite nice here. Where is the place that is traveled toward now? Walking forward again, and as the subject changed, it made Harry content. You won't remember this, but some time back I left for a summer. I mined for Mr. Daly and the Anaconda Copper Company in Butte. I stopped in Helena much and met lots of people from all over coming to mine or buy copper. Anyways, I know you always wanted to see other cities and peoples other than Portland, so that's what we're doing," Harry trekked on. "Portland," I said, trying to remember. "A dirty and dangerous wake snakes kind of place, you always called it, Mac. Remember when I left to go south? 'Cause all them gold they found?" Harry burst out laughing. "You sent me a letter saying you hated the smells and gambling folks. Luckily for you, I wasn't gone long. Them ain't some pumpkins, I say." I smiled. To see Harry in this state was a good thing. "I always got to protect my little brother. Everything I do is to protect you. You know that, right?" he asked me. "That is known, Harry." "New York," Harry said after a few minutes of silence. "New York?" I said inquisitively. "That's where we head." "Verily? For what reason?" I asked earnestly. "You'll be told when we get there, Mac. It's a surprise." Harry smiled and walked on. I had hoped my curiosity would satisfy from conversing, yet it swelled all the more. Day 79, July 17, 1905. The days number themselves, too, since my last writing. The previous weekend saw many a thing occur. It is perfectly remembered now, yet I am aware that 3 weeks will strip this memory from me. At last, it was done. I left Harry. I boarded a train, thoughtfully lonesome, like some vagabond, and jail nearly had me also. I will begin this tumultuous tale at its conception. It was the 76th day of my writing in this journal, July 14th, a Friday evening. The day's events was finished its recording, and Harry was hunting. The fire was started, he returned, the hare was eaten, we spake unto each, and then slumbered. The day was normal. However, while I slept, a dream came to me. I awoke, knowing I dreamt, but forgetful of its contents. But with a name did I also awake. It felt not like a plain word, it felt like a memory. Evelyn. The name was apparent in my mind, but whenever it was thought of, nothing more came. I saw a coin in a fountain, a wishing well, and that coin is Evelyn. On the 64th day of my journaling, when children, we would reach into fountains to steal coins, Harry told me. And now, with that idea in my mind, I reach into the water to remember Evelyn. Yet, the pennies are shinning around. The forgetting did this, and Evelyn was not remembered. I asked it of Harry, "Who is Evelyn?" Yet a horrible, bad idea that was. "So, you remember her?" he said after a long pause. I jogged up to him. "I knew her?" I asked. "Yes, you knew her." The response given by Harry lacked tone. "Well, who was she? Was she my lady friend?" Excitement gripped me. At that question's asking, he stopped. "Not sure she would have put it that way," he slowly said. Silence radiated from him with coldness. "She told me you two had interactions." The word was the largest said by him I have heard, and it was said slowly. "Of what sorts were these interactions? My brother, I still have not the knowledge of whether she were my wife or my mother." My voice was raised louder than I have yet. I was ever close to that coin, that memory, but it felt as if the water deepened. "That's enough of the questions, Mac." Harry's retort was brittle. "Harry!" My shouting was as loud as it could be. My rage made me hot. "I can't remember anything." Sad, then even now, I wept as if I were a child. "You know nothing of what is likened to this. Please tell me anything." "No, Mac. You've asked too much this time. We're done." "Who is Evelyn?" I screamed. "Your lover." Harry's voice was loud and masculine. It startled me. Our feet were gazed at until he continued, and she was... He stopped himself. I could see him tremble. I was silent. I would not dare risk ending this talk. I had pried him open, and I was about to see what was inside. And she was some man else's wife. I stared at him, a blankness on my face, I am sure, cheeks still and ears heavy. Then, to protest the revelation, not sure if in defense of myself or instinct or perhaps even memory, I started to say, I would never, but he stopped me. Meeting my eyes' gaze and enraged, Harry hit me. Despite remembering recent events, the moments before my body met the ground were dark. I remember looking up at Harry through blurred vision and limpsy, walking away. A mouth of blood I spat to the ground, but soon all sights were in darkness. The next day was a Saturday, July 15. The blow to my head and my exhaustion made me slumber all day and night, I suppose. The sound of an approaching train awoke me. It was barely dawn time. I looked up past the hedge of bush we encamped behind and saw the train billowing smoke. It was not traveling speedily. Harry was seen lying on the ground. I was not sure if he was asleep or not. The train began to pass, and that is when my fogged mind let my body do the acting. I was absent, and not in control of what was being done, which was running toward the moving train, in fact. Once I had caught up to the train, it was found a ladder leading to the roof as I ran beside. My ears heard Harry yell, "Mac!" from behind me. A ladder rung was grabbed and I let my body loose. Once my feet were off the ground, one brought itself to the bottom rung and I was on. I could not find the strength to climb or shift, so I clung to that ladder until the train stopped, which I know not of the time that passed before it did, but it was midday or late morning. "Mac!" I heard again. Harry had followed me. He had left all our accompaniments and pistol to pursue me. The ladder was climbed down before I saw Harry coming toward me in sprint, and then, like a bandit, he was toppled to the ground by some uniform-wearing man. My surroundings then revealed we were on a platform, a station. Another man in a uniform approached me and, grabbing my arm, he said to come with him. A room had us sitting next to each other, with the uniformed men. It was made apparent the law had not been observed by us boarding and riding without documentation. The fury I had on Harry subsided by replacing itself with fear. Not much of what was happening was understood by myself. Interestingly, because my brother was there to endure it with me, I was glad. Harry had told the officers we were poor men. Something curious was also said by him. He told them our surname was Black, which it is not, or at least he has spake to me a deal many times. Even in recounting this day, I cannot tell you myself which is what and what is truth. Ha! Onward I write. I am sorry, Harry, I whispered to him. The uniformed men were afar in the office. I want to trust you with the truth, Mac, but if you keep doing stuff like this... He paused. I don't know if it's right for me to tell you. This was spoken rather properly. Yes, Harry, I began. Once we are done here, can we take the train to New York and be done traveling? I asked, it being realized, for what felt close to the 100th time, the future simply being focused on, and not the past, was what was required of me. We just need to run your names by the sheriff's office, one of the officers stated unto Harry and me with a seemingly genuine smile. Just to make sure you are nobody dangerous. Once we are done, I'm willing to let you two be on your way. Purchasing a ticket next time you take a train is all I ask for. It was said by him in a very friendly manner. Something was ignited in Harry by this comment. Tension was seen in him, and as soon as the man's back was turned, Harry leapt from his seat and grabbed my arm with a great force. "Come on, Mac!" he yelled at me in a whisper, leading us out of the room. I knew commotion was behind us, but neither of us turned. The train we had arrived on was beginning to leave the station, and we were soon on it again. Luck is with us together, I suppose. The seats were rushed to by people, and the storage was quick to be filled with bags and such, so this made ease for Harry and me to happen unnoticed. Harry seemed to know the men would be shortly behind us. A closet hid us until we could feel the train moving. "Promise me you're never gonna do that again," Harry whispered. "I promise." My reply was quiet and true. The closet door was opened slowly, and Harry peered out, his hands stiff. He stepped forward and gestured for me to follow. The cabin was half full of people. We found an empty set of seats and took them. No one seemed to notice us, and my wonderings may be confirmed now. We are running from the law. We, or one of us, are criminal. Day 116, August 23, 1905. Another train has us for New York, and it ought to get us there in a few weeks, Harry says. I think we have stopped in every possible city there could ever be, boarding and unboarding at most stops, avoiding the uniformed men, and now that we see people, Harry has been finding some money. Some stations prove strict for tickets. Oft I wonder if the right direction is being traveled toward. We are just looking for a train that will take us straight there, says Harry. Perhaps the event on July 15th has us trying to avoid it. When I turn to that page, I cannot help but wonder what that uniformed man may have heard from the lawmen about a Herald and Mackenzie Black. I dare not ask Harry. The dealings and thoughts and tensions between Harry and I proved well. Only once has my actions enraged him since our change in lifestyle. From Portland to New York is where I told a nice lady across the aisle of a train we were headed. She was pretty and friendly, but Harry quickly rushed us along, scolding me as we went. It does bother me. The only interacting with a person I can remember is with Harry. Her and I may have become acquaintances. Perhaps we could have courted too. I will never know. And still, I know nothing of my apparent lover, Evelyn, another man's wife. I understand that is a wrong thing, and I wonder if that is why we are the way we are. I thought maybe it was something Harry had done. I dread thinking I did this upon us, but it will never be known. At least it seems that way. Day 123, August 30, 1905. A droll thought. Harry reads his fairy tale book daily, as I write in mine storybook the same. Each other and two cursed books is all our names have. Which is the more true? I know not. At least mine is a thing of life, not a thing of fairy tales. Day 135, September 11, 1905. At last, New York has finally seen our arrival. We are on an elevated railway. Never have I seen a thing similar. It travels through the air, at a height that is a true spectacle. I find it incredible, and it seems to be found the same by Harry. We arrived at Grand Central Station yesterday evening. Harry said we were to ride on the elevated rail. He said that we would not be seen that way. He seems to understand now that I know we are avoiding people, especially the police. An alley had us awake in it all night, which has left me fockling today. We used a new elevator to reach the railway. It was something. Once Battery Place is reached, Harry says, we have one more trip to make, and then we will be able to stay in one place. I am very excited. I still haven't an idea as to what happened to me, but the thought of being able to live a normal life with Harry gives me apathy for the truth. The train is moving very fast. As I look out this window, I can see the... Day 153, September 29, 1905. This blankness of paper has had my eyes for near a week. I have not written since September 11, and I haven't a clue as to how to begin again. I know the events must be recorded, and what has been spoken to me whilst behind these bars must be etched, but where to begin? How? Enchant my tears stain the page so that this ink runs to the floor? I have been given new clothes, and after rifling through it, by sweet luck, I have been returned this journal, but it has sat open and only flipped through only. Nothing can I write here. Day 154, September 30, 1905. The memory of what happened in the previous weeks is distant, and has my head hurting when thought of it. But I must try to write of the events. I know I must, before the memory has slipped forever, and my forgetting has me lodged in this jail forever. New York had us on the elevated train. Harry was there. I remember writing in this journal. A man across from me started talking to me. He asked me what I was writing. A journal, I told him. He lent me a smile. His age was nearly twice mine. He told me that he loved writing and painting. He was so very friendly. His name was James Cooper. I remember loving our conversation because it was so warm. We only talked about his work, which I suppose to some may seem uninteresting. But for me, it was a thing I was not used to, a normal conversation. I remember it all so clearly now. The train had itself filled with all kinds of people on their way to work. There was a beautiful young woman. She could not have been more than 25. A tall man with dark skin stood opposite her, gazing out the window. Two younger men in their early 20s sat next to each other. They were talking about their work as well. I overheard one of them say he was an electrician. So many people who had families and futures bustling about their lives innocently. And Harry. The train crashed. I remember the train turned, and there was a loud screeching sound and then a massive jolt, after which there was a moment where the air caught me floating, lifting me off my seat, and then the train hit the street below. No more than a few minutes could have passed before I awoke. I looked to my left and saw many dead bodies, some crushed and some impaled by large pieces of metal. I crawled out of the wreckage and lay on the street. There were dozens of people screaming and crying, and no more than 10 feet from where I lay in the wreckage, I saw a thing most horrific, a headless body. It was known who it was near immediately. Though bloodied and mangled, I recognized that brown suit-clad painter. It was Mr. Cooper. At that moment, I remember, my thoughts led to Harry. I sat and looked back at the train and tried to catch a glimpse of him amidst the flames, but I could not. I started to feel strange. My vision was fading, and I could feel my body grow limpsy. I fell backward onto the street. Just before my head hit pavement, a hand viciously grabbed my shoulder. That memory was the last I had of the accident. A dark and cold room had me awakened inside. It was this jail cell, where criminals are kept. I'm not sure how many days it was before I was visited by a man. He explained it all. He put before me the September 12th newspaper. He threw it at my feet, and on the front was a picture of the crash, the 9th Avenue derailment. It read, 11 confirmed dead, many injured. Harry, I whispered to myself. Yes, said that cold man, your brother is dead. The words stung me. I remember as if I had been stabbed. My body was sore all over from the crash, but a new pain surged through my body at the hearing of that. I will never forget those words. The man went on to tell me who he was and why I had been arrested. He said his name was Devant, and that he had been chasing my brother and me for almost 9 months. First, an explanation as to why he was chasing us was not given. However, he did explain how he caught us, or rather, how he caught me. I have memory of his awful words as clear as a cloudless day in my head. Mackenzie Adio, the younger brother of Harold Adio, a mundling out speckle, daft and without memory like Ansel born in Pennsylvania. He spoke in his deep voice. He had a thick accent like a Scot. I was commissioned by the Portland Police Bureau to find you two, caring not about being Vargal. That's my job, you see. When boys like you and your brother do something bad, I hunt them. You were a very wanted man, Mr. Ideal. You were tracked all across and around Northern America. The pattern you traversed on made little sense. Alas, some chatter of vagabonds, Harold and Mackenzie Black, came to me, hopping from train to train, getting caught once, only to flee again. Finally, a woman telephoned saying she talked to a young man who resembled your description. From Portland to New York is what she said. Now I figure there was only one reason you boys would be heading for New York, a freighter to Europe. So I changed course and wandered Grand Central for a week before I spotted you boys. You certainly knew what you were doing. Headed 2 miles northwest before camping that night out and boarding the elevated rail at 59th Street headed south. I was lucky you came in at night and had to wait till morning to ride again. I wished to find you and kill you both in the night, but you were lost until you came back to the elevator. Oh, lacking Providence be with me still. I know you likely recall not the setup. The train was doomed to wreck someday, travelling about the city like that. Man ought not to, I say. But a thought came to me to have you killed in a way no one would suspect. I used the nearest telephone to contact the IRT, where I spoke with a switchman. Jackson was his name. Jackson was able to aid me in stopping you. He coordinated with one named Kelly, the motorman of your train. My heart was racing. What he was to say next was almost sure. I scribe this now, knowing not every word may be exact, but this is what he said. This is his confessional. I told them to crash your train, the heartless man said, after looking to the left and right. You see, you dead is what I needed, said the man. They said they knew just the place. 53rd Street Junction is what they said, so that's where I went. I told them they'd be handsomely paid in greenbacks. I wondered why so much detail allowed this evil man to share. He revealed that, because of my forgetting, he felt his confession would not condemn him. The switchman Jackson asked me why, and I told him that 2 extremely dangerous men would ride the first morning train. Death or capture is what must come to these men. Whether he did it out of greed or patriotism, I do not care. My eyes met his as I looked up, and words found no place upon my lips. Rage settled and swelled in my heart. The man smiled. A report came in from the IRT that the train was driven by Kelly 3 times faster than it should have, and the curve was taken at just enough speed to have his car clear and the rest crash. It was quite a spectacle. The second bridged into a building before descending with the third cars. Lucky the one you were in plummeted to the street. 13 people died. The papers don't even have it right yet. Did you know that? 11 innocent riders of the train died in the accident, and a woman on the street below the tracks was crushed. The last, and most definitely the least, was your pathetic brother, Harold. His death and your capture made the expenses worth it. I remember staring at him, through the tears running down my face, wishing I could hurt him. Every bit of me wanted to attack this man. The violent inkling I felt was new to me. I had seen it in Harry when he hit me, but never myself. He knelt down in front of my cell, putting his face close to the bars, and stared back into my eyes. Do you want to know why I'm telling you this, Adil? Confession. My sins will never see the light, but now they have been spoken, so I thank you. I shook my head as my emotions paralyzed me as this devilish man continued. As I ponder it now, he makes me hate religion, but love it if at least I can know the truth. The darkness of my mind seems to be ending as I learn. I can fathom whatever shews darkness as light, but evil is the man who casts it on me. Spells and sorcery. Religion is the darkest of all, perhaps. He continued with his confession. And why did I do all this? My job is to detain. No, this was more than professional. These lengths were gone to because you took her from me. She is gone because of you. My thoughts were so swift. Evelyn came to my mind. She was my lover, and another man's wife, Harry said. The rage that swelled within was muddled with confusion now. The two most felt emotions in my life. I said nothing. Can you even remember what you did? The man asked me. No, is all I said, and it was quiet and drawn. Evelyn Adele was her name. She was a beautiful peg-puff and a mature lass, and my love was hers. Hers was mine also. Yet she was circumstantially married to your brother Harold. The man was standing at this point, looking at the wall across from my cell bars. With wide eyes, I'm sure, knowledge found its home in my troubled mind, in my troubled, forgetting mind. Evelyn was married to another man, Harry. But I was not her lover, this Devant was. Yet Harry believed it was I who loved her. Even now my heart has ached at the thought of it all. Patience sat in me, while I too sat in the cell, waiting. Devant continued to say, one day, she told me guilt had found her failings. She then went and told you about us, about our love. You told her you weren't the one she should be telling, but that Harold should be told. You also told her that Harold would forgive her, and that leaving me right then would be the best thing for her. Mr. Adele, you haven't the slightest truth of how ignorant that was of you to say such a thing. The man had paused. He looked to his left and right again, to ensure he was still lonesome. He looked straight at me again with red-faced. She listened to you. She told Harold she had been having an affair. An affair! I was her love, and Harold the adulterer, if ever that was the truth. She even told him she was going to leave the man, he continued. He knelt again, peering between the bars at my shuddering face. Alas, I shot her in her home after going to change her mind. You had turned her against me, and I was angry. I left my pistol, which was personal if you wonder, on the floor next to her and hid in the yard. I must tell you, Mr. Adele, it is truly a relief to finally tell someone about all this. I feel as if I finally get to bury the hatchet with Evelyn and find forgiveness with God. I know your forgetfulness will be my saviour. You may not even remember this tomorrow, will you, lad? My cell had me sitting in utter shock. Many blasphemies against truth were spoken. Forgiveness! Daft religion! I write this now. Such a dull and foolish thought to be forgiven by confession only. Doth not a good God require change? Can a man sin so horrendously and merely speak it and it not be held against him? Shan't sin be punished? But there is that man breathing and a dozen innocent dead and my brother. For what? The lust of some devil and his revenge for his own crime against that which he could not have? I scream and curse at this. Surely some good God in the sky would punish such evil. If God would not do such, then I reckon then I ought to. But much of what he said, nay, all of it, stunned me to stillness, for I did not even remember any of what had been said of my advising Evelyn. I shook my head at him, perhaps in defiance at the time. From my sight, I saw you enter the house. Your scream was petrifying, but Harold's yelling only 10 minutes after was more harrowing. I heard him shout in a struggle. Moments later he was fleeing his own home, dragging your bloody corpse to the railway track that lay south of the house. Only it was apparently not your corpse, for here you be. Perhaps that is where the loss of memory came from. Alas, when I came in after, you were gone. The second floor still had your sister-in-law dead and cold, and there was a large pool of blood at the bottom of the stairs. Harold must have found you with my pistol next to you and his dead wife on the floor. He would have figured everything out and come to the conclusion that you were the one she was loving. You boys struggled, and from what I heard and saw of your blood, he killed you down those steps. He probably wanted to kill you, and to him I'm sure he did. Why he ran off with you I do not know. That's what I surmise. As for my being on you, I knew your family before such, so I waited the next day to comment to the station. Told him I'd do this job for low pay. Oh, the sweetness of this all. Ain't it something? Got paid for my revenge, and the truth died with your brother. He died a dishonoured man, and shall forever be remembered as a criminal. And might I add that events played well into this plot. One dead and one hair in this cell. At that suggestion, the man laughed. My ears were finished with listening. At the notion of Harry's honor being stained, I could not bear this evil man. I had been angry with Harry. I had been confused by his misleading. But this truth that Devant put forth aligned with all that Harry had done. He told me he killed me, and he did because he thought I loved his wife. Suddenly, similar to when the train beckoned me to board without Harry, my anger strengthened and thrust me forward to the man's neck. My hand gripped through these bars and pinched. It was only a brief moment before my hand released its hold on that devil. His life could not be taken. By God, I still wonder if I should have. If not for my revenge of my unknown sister and my beloved brother, for the others slain by his recklessness. But I remember regret lived in Harry's eyes from his murder. Even if I am breathing, my mind died. I remember it. His eyes. When he said I was killed by him, there was anger and pain too. I think Harry would want me not to kill the man, having tasted revenge and its putridity. I do hope the light brings his actions up into sight. Now that this has been written, it is known forgetting will not keep what he has done hidden, at least never in my mind, for I shall read this daily and perhaps scribe things I am still to recall, and I still cannot remember if it is even true. As much as I have this man's confession written upon paper, what can make it stand? The foundational report of a stupid and forgetting jailed man like me? The man struggled to his feet as a guard rushed into the hall. "It is time to go, Mr. Devante," said the guard. "Thus, I will sit here, behind my bars, and I will keep..." September 13, 1905. A letter from Mr. Rudolph King. Dearest Mackenzie, I write to you now, with tears in my eyes, but gladness in my heart for your finding. First, I am deeply sorry for your loss of Harold and of Evelyn. I shall come to that soon, yet forgive me for not seeing you when I may have. I must write with care, for I know well that this letter may not find your eyes only. I have missed you, lad, more now than ever, knowing where you are and what predicament you are in. I should start by telling you of your innocence, not of my belief in it, but in its truthfulness. Let that be of hope to you. I did come to Harold after the tragedy. Whether by accident or planning, I shall not write here for my own sake. Yet you know I am no fool. Coming to him, or upon him, if that were the case, I pleaded to see you, if you were not dead. The scene at Harold's house was gruesome, and a second death was clear. But he insisted, yes, we were in the woods then, following along the railroad, that you were alive, but not safe. He explained what he thought of things, which I took lightly. It did not sound like the Apticock I knew. No. Let me tell you what he thought. You were having intimate relations with your own sister, Harold's wife, and had killed her in jealousy. While he said she had not named the man, he had found you, gun in hand and a dead wife on the floor. Anger came to him then, and struggling, you fell, and from the looks of it, serious head trauma occurred. Know that I have discussed with some of our scientific colleagues, and studies are being done to determine this forgetting, as Harold mentioned. But at our meeting, I did suggest to him you record your happenings and read them regularly. I hope this helped with the forgetting. I hope you were faithful in the journaling. It gave me pleasure, wondering if, even in the fog of remembering nothing, you were still my pupil, listening to my voice and engaging in my experiments. I am laughing at the thought of it. But to the matter of your brother's heart for you. That man loved you, Mackenzie. Even in his rage and betrayal, he loved you. I did investigate his claims of your affair, and determined it could not have happened. I know not if you remember, but Evelyn was a friend of yours from school, and you had introduced her to your brother, wanting her as a sister, even in those early days. You loved her, yes, but as a sister, not a lover. I am sorry to say I did not defend you much in front of Harry, for my shock, and for what he said about another matter. I shall get to that soon. I did scour your flat,
and Harold's home, and Evelyn's belongings, all with allowance from authority for my prestige, I should add. And I found letters of great vulgarity, written to Evelyn by a man with a strange hand, and even without your penship, it is plain to see these were by a different man. While the letters are not signed, I have given them to the lawmen to keep. If I find the real man, whom I believe to have killed your sister, I will entice him to write me something. Oh, that he be damned by an old man like me! At last, I must write to you of your brother again, and what he spake unto me on the night of my coming. Faith, Mackenzie, he was a man of faith. When he told me all that he believed you to do, he said despite it all he forgave you. I was baffled by such a claim. He said it did not come at an instant, but it was shown him by a little book he carried around with him. He pulled it from his breast and showed it to me. It is that book which you and I have tirelessly worked to dismantle. Do you remember it? The Holy Bible. I once thought it a foolish meandering of abusive rules and language. Find any of my papers on the matter, and you can see my heart was stone. But it is no longer, Mackenzie. This is not a thing of fairy tales. For Harold has shown me the heart of the book, and its heart is a great love that I still wrestle to fathom. He told me he forgave you because of something he had read. I scoured the book for it when I return to my study, and shall write it for you here. And be ye kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God, for Christ's sake, hath forgiven you. The Epistle of Paul the Apostle to the Ephesians, chapter 4, 32. Mackenzie, ponder how profound it is for your brother to have forgiven you, even with the thought of fornicating with and murdering his dear wife, because he felt his own forgiven sin greater than yours unto him. Ponder it! I was stricken. Your great brother then told me his own trespasses against the law of God were worthy of his own death. He quoted that too, which I later found to be another writing of Paul in his epistle to the Romans. That I shall not cite for you, because I wish you to find it on your own. That is quite the read, and I have read it thrice, without breaking the surface of its depth. And more unforgiveness I have found in the Gospel according to St. Matthew and St. John, and Paul to the Colossians. Mackenzie, even in my toilings against God, Christ has found me. Christ has shown me my own error, and the beauty and depth of his forgiving mercy, and to wipe away my guilt and tears. This is what your brother had tasted, which caused him to go to great lengths to hide you, and even dying, he loved you. Ha! Such reminds me of Christ himself. For it is written, But God commendeth his love toward us, in that, while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. And herein is love, not that we loved God, but that he loved us, and sent his Son to be the propitiation for our sins. The first is from Romans, I mentioned, and the latter from the 1st of John. Read them, dear lad. I have included in this letter a parcel of things to keep you time. First, the Holy Bible. I was permitted to have this of Harold. It was his, and I think it fitting for it to be yours. I purpose to keep my words short on the subject, for God's own words, written in this wonderful book, are of greater effect than anything I could write. Read it, Mackenzie. Second, I have included for your pleasure a new book by a young Scot, John Buchan. This is his latest, The Half-Hearted. It is a worthy read. You remind me of Lewis. Take that lightly now and well by the last page, would you? I hope you can begin your novel again upon your return. I imagine it being rather different than when you had first begun. Life does seem to change an author. I long to see your smile again. If you can, write to me. Know that I am working for you in court here. I pray the journaling has continued and has helped. Remember, lad, please remember. I do love you. Your father in study and perhaps faith, Rudy. Day 155, September 31, 1905. It is with the most joy within and upon me that I write to you now. Yester eve I received a parcel from someone who once knew me, although I do not remember him. He calls himself Rudy, my father of sorts. Oh, the tears that flow from me now! He wrote a letter to me upon my discovery and jailing. I have stuck it in yesterday's place, for I could write no more after receiving and reading his words. I have now Harry's Bible, not the little one he carried with him, but a larger one, rich and leather. It is something. This must have cost him a fair amount. Mr. Rudolph has insisted I read it, and I have. Many joys has it brought me, and is bringing me. I do not know yet why none of it were of sense to me prior, and why now I can suddenly see, but I understand it to be the grace of God, not an arbitrary thing of unsense, but a thing of the God of all things. And one of my new joys is knowing Harry forgave me of my wrongs, even if I had not committed them. What a thought that is! I only wish he knew. Many queries of God still are with me, queries, but not anger. I cannot yet justify the means of Devant, and I still hope hell upon him. But reading this Bible, it does not seem fair or proper or just to blame God for the sins of a man. Oddly, it seems to be written Christ hath offered to take blame from men. But something strange is required of a man to have his sins forgiven. Being born again. Or at least, this is what I perceive from St. John chapter 3. But I wonder of it all still. If I am that, then I see the kingdom of God with forgiven eyes. A strange concept, to be sure. I know then this Devant, though he spake of God and confession, has not cast his cares upon Christ, as the first epistle general of Peter guides, nor is he, that is the wicked Devant, a new man. For, if he is, I should think his doings impossible, or at least an unlivable guilt would burn in him as it had Harry. Indeed, this Devant seems more anti-Christ than of Christ. Oh, Harry, I wonder if, in death, he is free from such guilt. For I know him to have been a man of God, and such men may see death as gain. This was read also by me in this Bible. Perhaps all my findings in it should be written here too. I think I shall begin the days with such from now on. Perhaps Rudy will read them one day and help my understanding. And of knowledge I have much to do. I must continue in writing of each day's happenings, hoping one day I will remember, that one day healing will come to my mind, and I may share the truth of what happened. With Rudy's letter and my scribe conversing with Devant, I feel I know little but enough that such testimonies shan't hold in law. Yet, if I could recall and state, a witness we would have. I could lie, though I hate that I wrote this, for what credibility is there in a man that would even ponder such? Much changing have I to do if I am to be a man like my elder brother. Much I wish I could remember now, so I can bring honor to Harry's name. He deserves to be seen as the man he was. He will be, however, thought of as a criminal for as long as I can't remember. The 9th Avenue Derailment. This was a true event in history. The 9th Avenue Derailment of the Interborough Rapid Transit (IRT) Company's elevated railway was the first and worst elevated train derailment in the United States. Although Mackenzie, Harry, Evelyn, Rudolph, and Devant are fictional characters, this event did indeed happen. Below are some facts that pertain to this traumatic accident. 13 people perished. One was unidentifiable. The real date of the derailment was September 11th of 1905. It was the first derailment of an elevated train in North America. The motorman of the train's name was Paul Kelly. He was traveling 3 times faster than he should have. Cornelius Jackson was the switchman who supposedly had given Kelly the incorrect signal for the track, causing confusion, although Jackson was said to not have been at his post during the accident. Nobody truly knows, or has recorded publicly, why Paul Kelly did what he did. Due to his speed, the crash happened so that Kelly's locomotive cleared the wreckage. Kelly fled after the crash and was found 2 years later. The second car of the train penetrated a nearby apartment building, hovering over the bloodied street below, one end inside a woman's home, the other on the track. Soon after, it descended to the street below with a third car. The woman in the home, Mrs. J.G. Crow, recalls the event as written in the Evening World of September 11, 1905. The New York. Quote, "Most of these who came through from the car to her home were men," said Mrs. Crow. "But there were a few women, and they were treated brutally by the men, who acted like maniacs. They thrust the women aside, rushed through the room and down the stairs to the street, with apparently no thought for the safety of any one but themselves. There must have been 50 or 60 of them who escaped in this manner. Just inside the two windows, I had a large cabinet, which contained a number of my wedding presents, some old relics of my parents' families, and other things I prized very highly. This was hurled to the floor by the excited passengers, and everything in it destroyed. After, insert her, children were safe, I went back and looked out of the window. On the sidewalk was a great crowd of people, and above them, just toppling from the structure, hung one of the cars. People were falling from the car to the sidewalk, and I saw it start to fall." End quote. I do not believe this tale was a departure from the previous writings in this anthology. While most of the elements and themes of this tale are fiction, there are things that are not. For instance, Mrs. Crow's comments in the descriptive ending, men acting like maniacs, caring for only themselves and their own safety. When in dire situations, do we not all behave like selfish beasts? After all, are we not just that at our core? For there is none who does good, no, not one. And yet we see an overwhelmingly Christ-like forgiveness displayed in the true protagonist of the tale, Harry. Wronged unspeakably, he forgave supernaturally. But that is what love and forgiveness are, truly against our nature and from God alone. While this might be historical fiction, the faith expressed by Harold Dio and Rudolph King is genuine. Faith in the forgiving and redemptive love and work of Jesus Christ. We have often thought throughout these pages on the themes of sin and forgiveness, anger and pain. This short tale, I believe, and aimed to write as such, embodies the hope of forgiveness. Even the worst of men can be forgiven and saved, and the call of a Christian is to thus forgive. If the Lord brings one to repentance, perhaps even one who caused us unspeakable pain, we are commanded and commended to forgive even the worst of men. These things are the crux of the message in my book of Dragons and Men, forgiveness and unforgiveness. After all, this is our Christ's example. For God commendeth his love toward us in that, while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. Alas, this is not a thing of fairy tales.
You just listened to an excerpt from my new book of Dragons and Men, a Christian anthology on the topics of sin and suffering. The full book is now available for purchase on Amazon and at patreon.com. Links are in the description.